We've received the unfortunate news that Nintendo has made the decision to cancel both the Koshien Finals and the Nintendo Live Tokyo event where their World Championships were going to be played. It's for a very understandable reason that I totally respect. Apparently there have been persistent threats against Nintendo employees, and recently those threats have escalated to also include spectators and staff for the Koshien event. They'll be postponing both events for the sake of the safety of those involved. This is obviously terrible and sad. No one at Nintendo or at those events should have to even feel unsafe, regardless of whether the threats are credible. On top of that obvious and most important issue, events on this scale take months and months of planning. Koshien was only 9 days away, and having to back out of it will be costly and delay the event by a lot. Even the competitors, I'm sure, already had travel plans that would be getting interrupted by that point in time. My sympathy to the event staff. This sort of situation is the worst case scenario for a lot of reasons. To my knowledge, the only information we have about the nature of the threats is what has been shared by Nintendo. If there's other information out there that I'm not aware of, by all means let me know, and if I'm wrong about this, I will make sure to correct myself, but all anyone is reporting on at the time of writing is what Nintendo is telling us about the threats, and the only information to glean from that is that they've been persistent threats that escalated from being against employees to being against the event itself. Remember how in the screen video I talked about the danger of jumping to conclusions? Some folks in the community decided that the threats must have been related to community efforts to get accessibility issues for Splattercolor screen handled. Again, if you have any evidence I'm missing, bring it to my attention. But I have evidence to the contrary to present to that point. Nintendo cites these threats as having been persistent. Screen has been available in the game since December 1st, and the controversy didn't gain steam immediately as soon as it came out either. Would they really be talking about persistent threats on that kind of timeline? This is a frustrating conclusion that people have arrived at, because it's one that really makes the competitive community look bad, and does so before it has much of a basis at all in empirical fact. On Twitter, what you may be putting forward, even just as a suggestion of possibility, is going to be taken as a statement of fact by someone who's not reading carefully enough, and they'll spread that rumor to others. People understand that, on Twitter, citing all your sources and doing academic due diligence isn't really even possible without a really long thread, so information tends to circulate on the basis of trust. The community of players and spectators who would have been enjoying Koshien are largely Japanese. Even if we assume, and this is a massively questionable, maybe even probably wrong assumption, that the threats are deriving from a widely known competitive community issue that lots of people would be familiar with, what are the odds that the issue is something that we've even heard about, given that it would arise out of the Japanese Splatoon scene, not the Western scene? But that's giving the theory way too much credit. We're trying to assume it makes sense, when this sort of thing never makes sense. A reasonable person does not harass and threaten people. And who's to say there was some larger point being made here? Maybe someone just has a grudge against an individual who works at Nintendo and this is a means of scaring them. People are looking at something stupid and destructive, trying to attribute rational justifications for a fundamentally irrational decision. There is no good reason to threaten these events, which leaves only bad reasons, and there's an infinity of tremendously varied bad reasons, ranging from calculated to psychotic, none of which I currently see enough evidence to favor over others. Furthermore, the fascination with knowing the reason is not, ultimately, going to lead to anything beneficial for us, the public. So what if we knew why Nintendo were being threatened? All that gives us is a little more of a story to tell to try and wow our friends with. What it might also do is publicize the person doing the threatening, make them feel famous because they're being talked about. One of the worst things media outlets do in the cases of violent tragedies when they do actually happen is publicize the quote-unquote manifestos of the perpetrators. Now, if you commit one of the worst crimes possible, you get to spread your message in a way that you never would have had access to otherwise. You're famous. Leave these distorted, unhappy people out of the limelight. Don't make them important. Don't try to learn their names or their motives. Let them be some anonymous, nameless nobody so they never get the bully's satisfaction of someone being afraid of specifically them. The people who need to know that information and the people who have the power to do something about it, they will get that information. But those people are not you. For us, we keep the cameras and the microphones pointed at the people impacted by the situation so they get what they need to move forward. My sympathies to the teams who won't get to compete in the events like they planned, and the event organizers who were looking forward to putting it on and invested a lot in making it happen. I hope that everyone involved is safe, and that the situation can be resolved and not weigh on people's minds for too long. Meantime, let's just adjust as needed to not having these events when we expected them.